raise the roof, raise the roof, raise the roof, hey, raise the roof, hey. Sorry for being late, everybody. How late am I? Like an hour late? Yeah, sorry about that. Apologize to everybody who's waiting. But we're here, and that's what matters most. We're live and in action, and that's what matters most, folks. Who's in the chat? Rich was here, but then he left. Susie K, I don't know who's still here. Effing Music Man's here. Heck yeah, dude. What's up, brother? Matthew's here. What's up, brother? Susie K's still here. Ian's here. Nice to see that everybody's here. So, this morning when I first posted this live, it seemed like the main headline was that not Trump, but U.S. and China were going to go into a trade war. As I got ready to stream, news broke that Trump was going to put a pause on these tariffs. The stock market is rising. I'm confused. I think everybody's a little confused about what exactly is happening, what exactly is the strategy here. But, I mean, look at this CNN headline. Here we go. Markets skyrocket after Trump hits a 90-day pause on most new tariffs. So, wow. I mean, talk about a dizzying few weeks, or dizzying even week days with all this tariff stuff, man. At this point, I have no idea what his strategy is or what his logic behind all this is. Maybe he just freaked out because the stock market was doing so bad. Hello, Dennis. VKM EU announced 25% tariffs on the U.S. in some industries. Nambi says, what? Are you kidding me? Was this all about the top few playing the stock market and making billions, including Trump? I don't know. Maybe. Georgiane says, it's just chaos every day. He needs to be impeached. Georgiane, he ain't being impeached, so don't hang your hat on that. Yeah, I haven't. Seems China tariffs will continue. Yeah, I think I saw that too, that the China tariffs are going to stay in for now. I mean, again, at this point, I have no idea what his logic or his strategy behind this, because it's not like, did he get agreements from, 90 countries or whatever, 60 countries, whatever? Or like, is he hoping that this 90-day pause, they'll be able to negotiate during this 90-day pause without tanking the stock market? Maybe that's his strategy, is like, let's take the downward trend off the stock market and try to negotiate in this 90-day period. That's the only logical thing I can think. Ian says he's pushing tariffs on all countries for 90 days apart from China. That's my understanding. Let me see if this article can enlighten us a little bit. Justin, President Trump said he is applying a 90-day pause on new tariffs as his trade war shakes the world economy. At the same time, he announced that he was raising tariffs to 125% on China, ratcheting up his tit-for-tat with Beijing. Stocks were volatile and then skyrocket higher after Trump's announcement. Oh, CNN has a town hall with Brennan tonight. What time is that? VKM says, watch conservative media somehow say any stock market rebound is because Trump is a good president. Yeah. Let's see if we can find any info on this. 90-day pause.
And President Trump responded very courageously to that, and we are going to work on a solution with our trading partners.
And if I could just, excuse me, Raquel, if I could just add to what the Secretary said. Many of you in the media clearly missed the art of the deal. You clearly failed to see what President Trump is doing here. You tried to say that the rest of the world would be moved closer to China when in fact we've seen the opposite effect. The entire world is calling the United States of America, not China, because they need our markets, they need our consumers, and they need this president in the Oval Office to talk to them. And that's exactly why more than 75 countries have called, because the United States of America is the best place in the world to do business. And as the president has shown great courage, as the secretary has said, in choosing to retaliate against China even.
Yeah, so it seems like China's the only one that we're still targeting.
All right, I want to bring Javier David back in here. Javier, first, easiest question. What's your reaction to what we just witnessed here in the past 10 minutes?
Well, what the market wants, the market gets. It can bully the Fed into cutting rates. It can bully Washington politicians. And if you remember the lesson of the brief tenure of the UK Prime Minister Liz Truss, the bond market's the biggest bully of all, and it can intimidate anyone and push politicians out of office. So that's what we're seeing. Once bond markets started registering its disapproval of what was going on, the game changed. I heard the Treasury Secretary just say that Japan is at the front of the queue. There's a reason for that. They are the single biggest holder in international terms, $1.1 trillion worth of Treasury bonds. China's the next one. And if you pick a fight with your creditors, they can inflict real pain on you. And so I think that the Trump administration is learning a very painful lesson of the limits of political power in the bully pulpit.
You know,
basically anti-Trump people are going to say this was, this is chaotic. They got scared, et cetera, et cetera. And the Trump administration says, this is the art of the deal. You guys don't even understand.
When it comes to trade and the economy.
Well, it is a strategic competitor, but it is also has this really strange symbiotic relationship with the United States. They trade with us. We trade with them. Mm-hmm. We absolutely kind of need one another. But the reality is China has turned itself into the sort of manufacturing warehouse of the world.
God, look at that spike in the stock market. Crazy.
Foreign economies to operate within their borders. So this has been a fight that's been running for decades, and it's not going to go anywhere. But we're reaching something of a tipping point, or a flashpoint rather. And the Trump administration is not going to let this go. And they are right to challenge some of what China's policies are and the way that they defend their own turf. But doing it with 104% tariffs may not be the way to go.
So earlier in this newscast, you said, your advice to people who might have a little bit of money in the stock market, or just regular people who are worried about their grocery bills. What should they be doing about their money right now? What's your advice now over the next 90 days? Is it the same?
Yeah, I mean, look, unless you're retiring tomorrow or next week or anywhere in the immediate term, and in the immediate term, I mean like a month, I wouldn't look at your 401k. It's not going to be good. Don't upset yourself. And it's not good to make emotional investment decisions. But the best thing to do for people that are trying to ride out this volatility, maybe shift a little to cash. The bond market has showed us that that's not the safety bet that we all once thought it was. So that's a dicier proposition, but there's a lot of money moving into cash. And so maybe that's the way to go. And cash, in fact, will give you a little bit of yield, not as much as it did a while back, but because the interest rates have come down. But there's a little bit of a reward to being a saver nowadays.
All right, Javier David, thank you so much for being on standby for this breaking news. I know that they're going to talk to you in the next show. Thank you, sir. Well, let's bring in CBS News correspondent Chanel Call, who is following the story from us from the newsroom. That press conference in front of the White House with Scott Bessent. We cut out of there for a minute. What else did he have to say, Chanel?
Well, I want to pick up on a point that you were just chatting about with Javier, because when asked if this pause was a response to the plunging stock market, Scott Bessent.
Did you know that you can have permanent teeth in just 24 hours? That's right.
What is
Only
this?
24 hours and your new smile is ready. And with a
added that last week's said, no, this was driven, in fact, by the president's strategy. He also added that
I guess it's possible. I guess this was all thought out and this was strategic. I guess it's all possible. MM says gold is money, everything else is credit. Georgianne says, hopefully I'll make back my $50K I've lost over the past month from my IRA. I'm praying for you. Cohen says, I just read that there will be a 90-day pause for 75 countries, but it's unclear which countries those are, and those countries are still hit with a 10% tariff. Oh, okay. By the way, Sam, Jamie Raskin is your representative by any chance? Your dad's Wikipedia page mentions, yes, Jamie Raskin is in my parents' district. So he wants to start a war with China on purpose. I guess he's pissed at China that they didn't come to the table yesterday, or at all, I guess. So all countries have a 10%. China has very high tariffs. Is there a list showing tariffs? I don't know. I don't even know if anybody knows exactly what the math is right now. Political Pal says, of course, alongside his mass deportations, he believes we are at war with the whole world, and the world is ripping us off, and that we need to make them pay for us. I believe he believes that.
Indication that this is our strategy here? Did he allude to anything like that?
Well, I mentioned that there were questions from reporters outside the White House. Why? And why now? Because we've been talking about this the last couple of days, what we've been seeing in the stock market with things plunging so recently. And he said, no, it's not what's happening in the stock market that drove this decision today. It's part of the president's strategy.
It's got to play a role. If the stock market didn't crash, they wouldn't be doing this. You know what I mean? It's that simple.
Trump pausing tariffs on most nations for 90 days. The Dow currently up 2,500 points. But he's also raising taxes on Chinese imports to 125%. The market's starkly responding to that. President Trump posted this online. I am hereby raising the tariff charge to China by the U.S. to 125% effective immediately. Conversely, and based on the fact that more than 75 countries have called representatives of the United States, I have authorized a 90-day pause. We're going to have much more ahead right here on CBS News 24/7. Lindsay Reiser.
Look, I guess it's possible that this was part of the strategy. Would you ever debate Vince Dow or John Doyle? I have no idea who any of those people are. Nambi says, insider trading, I tell you. In my estimation, they probably... I don't know. It's hard to say because they say things and you don't know, like, is this just part of the art of the deal or is this real? You know, when he says like 2 or 3 days ago that, no, these tariffs are here to stay, he's not budging, et cetera, et cetera. And then a few days later, he does budge and they are gone. And it's hard to tell what he's using as a negotiation strategy and what's real. And Dennis is highly unlikely that this was strategic. That 4D chess argument is bogus. He's Trump. He's a child. He does childlike bogus things. I agree.
Of ripping off the USA and other countries is no longer sustainable or acceptable. He went on to say, quote, I have authorized a 90-day pause and a substantially lowered reciprocal tariff during this period of 10%, also effective immediately. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent discussed the decision.
Every country in the world who wants to come and negotiate, we are willing to hear you. We're going to go down to a 10% baseline tariff for them, and China will be raised to 125 due to their insistence on escalation.
So it seems pretty clear.
The markets responded abruptly to the news after a rocky...
Seems pretty clear. China's getting 125. Everybody else is getting back to 10, which is like... Why, I don't know, why not just go to 0 during negotiations and figure it out from there, or go back to what we were at? The 10% seems sort of pointless. Like, it doesn't really help the U.S. that much, and it kind of just slightly bothers global trade. That's my analysis. Vince Dow and John Doyle are conservative YouTubers. Sure, I'll debate whoever. I mean, I don't know if anybody wants to debate me because I'm just a dude with like 8,000 subscribers, but if they do, I'm down. The United States is being run by a mad king and a gang of thieves.
Higher tariff rates on the rest of the world, but everyone's still now subject to a 10% tariff. Notably, though, and this is what I don't think the markets have heard yet, he was asked later, what about those sectoral tariffs on things like pharmaceuticals or certain other goods? And the secretary said those remain in place. So really the only thing that's happening is everyone is facing a 10% reciprocal tariff except China, who's facing a 125% total tariff now. And if you're in certain sectors, those remain in place. The goal here is to now force conversation, negotiation over the next 3 months into early July. And if it's like anything else this administration has done, that deadline will move to try to get these countries now to a more favorable trading position and not have them necessarily completely cripple and crumble under the weight of something more than 10%. It is true that the secretary has heard from and met with Japanese, Vietnamese officials, is expected to meet or be in close touch again with South Korean and Indian authorities as well. And notice the geography there, all of them next door neighbors to China. I asked him, is this about the rest of the world versus China? And what he said was, in essence, well, let's play it then. Canada, Mexico and Canada, are they part of the 10%?
Yes.
Okay. Second, given then that you have the rest of the world essentially calling it, it's not China, is this now just all about China?
Well, it's about bad actors, and what we will see is some of the very early countries are China's neighbors. That we're going to see. I'm seeing Vietnam today. Japan's at the front of the queue. South Korea.
Thank God Japan's at the front of the queue so we can get those switch twos, guys. Thank God. Samuel Webb says, I think Trump often goes overboard and dials it back and people breathe a sigh of relief, but 10% on everyone is still bad. That's what I get. It's like, all right, so you took off some tariffs. So it doesn't fix the problem during these negotiations. The problems, there are still tariff problems that exist during these negotiations. I mean, again, they're not as bad. I don't know. I guess to them, they want to not completely fold. So keeping the 10% on means like, we're not completely going to zero. We're staying strong on our tariff agenda, but we're easing it to try to negotiate, I guess. Whether you support Trump or not, he made clear this was his economic plan. He definitely made clear that tariffs were part of his economic plan. That's true. I don't think anybody understood, because he doesn't usually, especially during his campaigns historically, he doesn't get very specific about his plans. AOTM, what's up with you, dog? Boom, boom, bing, 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 bang, bang, boom, 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 boom.
During his testimony, so there's some confusion and anger with all of this up on Capitol Hill as well. But of course, the moment, almost immediately, we started to see the markets rebound, which is part of what this is about.
MM says, you need to research the last 50 years of global trade. What do you mean by that exactly?
Today as well. But now, this may start to push things back into positive territory. What we still don't know, what we want to know for certain, 10% for everyone but China, okay. Which sectoral tariffs remain? Who's on the call sheet? They still have not told us of those 75 countries who's called and who hasn't. At that point, then what are you negotiating with each of these countries? Are you really going to put together 75 plus different arrangements? Or are you going to potentially try to get blanket decisions made by some of them? And remember, the other thing that they signaled yesterday, this isn't just about trade now. This is about the scope of American foreign assistance. This is about whether the U.S. military remains in a country.
You need to research the last 50 years of global trade because there are a myriad of reasons to take action now. I'm not saying there shouldn't be action now. I don't think I've ever said that. I think my main point is that, in my opinion, Trump's strategy is foolish, not concentrated, not strategic, and it looks to me like he's going to use all of this to help more rich people. China, of all countries, will be forced to come to the table because the majority of their economy relies on exports to the USA. Well, why didn't they come to the table yet? It seems like if they were that worried, they would have come to the table already, like these other 75 countries. Like he said, there's still a lot of unanswered questions here. Samuel Webb says, today I read the most school vouchers in Alabama, which takes money from public schools and put them in private homeschools, are from kids who already go to private schools. Inlay says, I told you this was a scam so they can buy low. That's possible, yeah.
I think if you use that language, we have seen what has been happening in the markets, in consumer sentiment. Language like that is tough for the American people to deal with, and it also does incite retaliation from the partners that are.
I mean, I think we'll never know. Was this 90-day pause planned 2 weeks ago? Okay, then maybe we can give some credit for being strategic. Was this a reaction to them just seeing the stock market tumble? Then I wouldn't give them any credit. Ian says foreign total investment in the U.S. securities are $32 trillion. More than the U.S. GDP, the U.S. is the greatest beneficiary of the multilateral economic system it had created. But Trump is too dumb. VKM says, I heard that Apple was flying plane loads of iPhones into the U.S. to escape tariffs. Maybe. And what's the deal with, I've lost track of exactly what's happening with Canada and Mexico. Because they're our two biggest trade partners outside of China, right? Nampy says it's simple, follow the money, but China not playing this game with Trump. Political Pal says, remember that conservatives are bullies.
That this could be rolled back in 90 days, and there could be developments in a few hours, in a couple of days. So I think there's excitement, but caution from the investment community. In the economy,
this is not about, I think this is all this is just, buy low, sell high. Like the economy tanked. They heard the tariff news. They thought, oh, let's buy up a bunch of stuff since it's buy low. Boom. Simple as that. 63 people watching, folks, but only 34 likes. Don't forget to like the stream. If you're not subscribed, please subscribe. Captain 75 says, Kevin O'Leary suggested a 400% tariff on China on CNN. He had a good argument. I've watched Kevin O'Leary on this stream before. When I've heard him talk about tariffs, he just speaks in generalities and stereotypes. I haven't heard him say a lot of really good information. Doesn't America have a surplus when it comes to services? Are other countries whining about that? I don't know. Michael Yu says this is all reality TV drama. I think I don't deny that.
when we saw the reciprocal tariffs and he pulled out that big board with all those.
I mean, Trump is a master at this kind of stuff in terms of just creating glued eyeballs. That's for sure.
Let's sort of go back months before the administration started. The talk of 10%, 25% was getting that reaction that I think you're sort of getting.
Lily says, it is deeply distressing how stupid the U.S. president is and how much it will affect those of us outside of the U.S. who had nothing to do with electing him. Yeah, America has a lot of power worldwide, and the critique of that is fair. The tariffs will level the playing field for U.S. companies, specifically for shrimp farmers in Louisiana. That would be best case scenario. You're right, but there's a lot of other things that could happen when these tariffs, or if these tariffs ever come into play. Dennis says, you're right, Sam. Trump is a true drama mama. He a drama mama. Trump is not factoring services that the U.S. exports into his tariff calculations. That's true. Saucepaw says Trump blinked. Trump choked like a dog.
And I think it really is key motivating factor behind why we saw the moratorium and the
Can you
administration.
explain that more? I don't understand that part.
I don't know. I don't have enough information right now to say whether he blinked or this was part of the strategy. I will say that. I will say this is pretty chaotic. And just a few days ago, he was saying that the tariffs weren't moving. Again, was that part of his art of the deal? Was that true? And he flopped. I can't tell right now. There's not enough information out there. We may never know the answer to these things either, for sure. And people are just going to speculate for forever.
Bond vigilantes, because they used to push up yields. Investors that invested in bonds used to push up yields, and that was.
That's still going to have. It was 104 a few hours ago. Well, not even an hour ago.
Well, it's still prohibitively expensive, and again.
Sauceboss says they saw bonds starting to liquidate and the credit spread widening. Yeah, I agree that this, if I was to guess, it seems like they were scared about where the stock market and bonds were going. I don't know. And that's just a guess. I'll admit that. I'm just speculating, but.
Bill skyrocketed to over 300,000. So it just kind of shows you how reliant, despite all of the fact that we've talked about buying American and making American the.
I don't know. Maybe keeping it 10% is smart. That way you have some room to go down in negotiations if possible. I'm just thinking out loud, folks.
Whatever reason these tariffs, which are a tax, are implemented, it's really the consumers.
What are the chances of a second Great Depression? I think the odds are increasing. Well, I don't know. If we can get good deals with countries, I don't think there's going to be a second Great Depression. If we keep having this back and forth nonsense, we'll be in trouble for sure. Origins and Tall Tales says none of this is smart. Public pressure had an effect. Yeah, probably.
We got confirmation from Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent that Canada will kind of have that pause on bigger reciprocal tariffs. They already had their own kinds of tariffs going on, so they'll just get that 10% baseline tariffs. The question about the European Union, which approved this morning its first set of retaliatory tariffs, is one that I still have. We're waiting to talk to trade advisor Peter Navarro, who will talk to reporters outside the White House in a couple minutes. But just given that Scott Bessent and White House officials have talked about a pause being on all 75 countries who have come to the negotiating table, which members of the European Union have in regards to auto tariffs, suggests to me that they are still subject to that pause, that 90-day pause, and they're just getting the 10% reciprocal tariffs. But we'll look to get clarification from some White House officials throughout the day.
Aaron, what else are you chasing? What is your team and your unit asking of White House officials right now? What do you need clarity on?
Curious on how this came together. You saw Caroline Leavitt and Scott Bessent tell reporters that this was President Trump's plan the entire time. They really downplayed whether the stock market, what happened with the bond market, if that impacted this decision. So looking to see how this exactly came together, if things will change. We're seeing Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent really take a front row seat in terms of messaging in the past 48 hours or so. Will the Howard Lutniks, Peter Navarro, also continue to be part of the conversation?
Wow, Bonnie Miller, I really appreciate that donation. Thank you so much. Holy moly.
Taking a back seat. But just given how some of their comments have impacted the market compared to Bessent's, curious to see if that will change in the messaging.
All right. Thank you, Aaron. Hang out with us if you can. Let's go ahead and go now to CBS News congressional reporter Torian Small, who is on Capitol Hill for us. And Torian, I imagine that some lawmakers have a thing or two to say in front of the cameras here on what's going on.
Lindsay, what's quite remarkable about this news broke during a hearing with Trump's trade representative, Jamieson Greer. He testified before the House Ways and Means Committee exactly about this issue of tariffs. And he was quite defiant, especially in pushing back against the very intense grilling from Democrats on this panel about Trump's trade policy, saying that the idea behind it is to now center Main Street over Wall Street, seemingly mocking the amount of.
Origins and Tall Tales says a smarter way would be incentives inside the country to build things without automation, among many things. Right. None of this answers the questions of differences in labor costs, automation, any of that. Sauceball says they did the math in game theory or whatever, and it concluded that China is hard AF. FM Music Man says, when will the GOP grow a backbone and push back on this clown? Never. Bonnie, you're the best. Michael Yu says, just stop this dumb nonsense on tariffs, restore USAID. I can't do any of that, Michael, unfortunately. Matthew says, you're almost at 9K subs. Am I? What am I at right now? Let me check. What's my sub count at? I'm at 8,989 subs. I need 11 subs to hit 9K. 11 subs. If you're out there and you haven't subbed, I need you to sub right now. VKM says, Dems need to pick a good debater on their side to challenge the Republicans to a televised debate and point out their cowardice if they refuse. I don't know, VKM. Debates don't matter. I would say Dems need to pick a good messenger. Someone who knows how to communicate generally, not just a good debater. Michael Yu says, now the U.S. economy will avoid a recession. Yeah, maybe. Sean says, market manipulation. That feels a little bit more conspiratorial to me. I think it's more of just they got scared of what the market was doing, and they needed to pull back the reins a little bit on this like tariff onslaught. Sauceball says Senator Rand Paul, the guy named after Ayn Rand, I'm assuming, was the first sheep to jump the fence against Trump. Yeah, I don't have any respect for that guy, so I don't really care if he was the first to do it, but George says, I made massive profits in the Forex market today betting on Agent Orange being a wuss. Did you really? How did you today you knew this was going to happen? How did you know? TM says the favorites in primary 4 years before always come in like last place when it's all said and done. Savage Bellerquan says rates and equity prices moving in the same way scared Trump. George says he never holds these tariffs longer than 24 hours, heck, even 12. Well, these were longer than 24 hours. These were from last week. Well, I guess they went into effect last night, right? Technically. That's an interesting point. Maybe there's something to that. After they go into effect, he doesn't hold them longer than 24 hours. That's an interesting thing to watch. George, why didn't you tell me that? I would have bet last night too, or this morning. Right, this was Wednesday of last week when he announced it, but they didn't go into effect till last night at midnight. Yeah, so they didn't even last 24 hours. What are those, Scott Besson's glasses? Oh, that's an ad. I still can, but it's now it's surging. I missed the surge.
Everyone thinks, if you buy into it, right? Well, the dollar is strong. The economy is strong. You are buying into the idea that the government is not going to default on its debt. You are essentially loaning money to the government when you buy into the bond market. You buy their debt. And so we just had a couple of auctions where the government tries to sell off treasuries.
FM Music Man, isn't the wishy-washy nature of Trump a sign of lack of strength? Yeah, I think that's a good point. It's like, it's so chaotic. It's so wishy-washy. How is that a good strategy? How is that the art of the deal?
As attractive as they have before. And so bullying the bond market is kind of, it's more bullying the government. It's more signaling to the government that, hey, we're not necessarily really sure about this. And then Javier made a point about interest. When you have to incentivize your buyer of your debt, in this case, investors, to buy into this and say, no, it's great. You have to give them a higher return.
I don't know what she's saying. She's just blah, blah, blahing in my mind. Tauntaun says, you triggered liberals. God King Trump is playing 5D high-level chess. Yeah, I think at the even if this is planned, I don't know if this is 5D chess, no matter what. Bonnie says, agree about the pump and dump. Origins and Tall Tale says, if you want to fix the economy, it would have made more sense to elect someone really experienced and educated in the economy, not a bully. Good point. BB Laser says, Trump realized last night these tariffs would hurt his pal Vlad. Oh, God, you think so? Us mere mortals can't understand Trump's 5D chess. Oh, God. I mean, even if this is a strategy, it's not like this is that brilliant of a strategy. It's like, put the tariffs on, scare people, take them off, and negotiate. It's not like it's not rocket science, right? Obsessive Audio says, turns out that filling DC with sociopathic con artists was a bad idea. I can't answer that question, Political Pal. Southpaw says, I don't know if anyone heard the PM of Singapore's speech, but it basically said Asia was going to be okay. They were going to go full socialist to beat the pain. Should I watch that? PM of Singapore. Is this it? Dub Raider says, it's not rocket science, but it appears to have been effective. He's got them to the negotiating table. We still have a long time to see if this is quote unquote effective. You're right. He has gotten them to the negotiating table. You're not wrong.
Several members have asked about the impact of the tariffs on specific industries in Singapore. We are assessing the situation carefully, but our deeper worry is not the direct impact that these businesses face.
Origins and Tall Tale says there were better ways without scorched earth. Yeah, I mean, don't forget all the damage that this has already done. I mean, people have lost tens of thousands of dollars. And I'm not talking about the investor class. I'm just talking about regular people with money in the market or money in retirement. They've lost a lot of money, and maybe they'll get it back. I hear that, but
it is the wider implications for the global trading system and the world economy. So let me explain. First, the reciprocal tariffs are a fundamental rejection of the WTO rules. One of the cornerstones of the WTO multilateral trading system is the most favored nation principle, or MFN. Most favored nation sounds like giving special privileges. Actually, it means the opposite, that every member must treat all other members equally. In other words, if a country extends more favorable terms or imposes additional restrictions to one trading partner, it must do the same to all other WTO members. There are some carve-outs and exceptions to the MFN rule, for example, to allow free trade agreements. but MFN has long been the bedrock of the multilateral trading system. It ensures a level playing field, prevents discrimination, and enables countries, big or small, to compete fairly in global markets. This has helped to liberalize trade amongst more than 100 WTO members, each with different economic and political and social concerns. America's new tariff regime is a complete repudiation of the MFN principle. It opens the door to selective country-by-country trade relations based on unilateral preferences. If other countries adopt the same approach as the US, the rules-based trading system will unravel. This will spell trouble for all nations, but smaller countries like Singapore will face greater pressures, because small countries have limited bargaining power in one-on-one bilateral negotiations. So the major powers will dictate the terms, and we risk being marginalized and sidelined.
Southpaw says, when the PM goes into plans for the working class, that's when it gets good. Do you have a timestamp for me? Michael Yu says, free trade Republicans, where are they? Republicans, they're deep inside the Republicans, and they're scared to come out because they are a cult party following one leader and one leader alone. There's no policy outside the great leader that is Trump. Blind Owl says, create a problem just to fix it, just to be the hero to some. Yeah, I hear that.
Second, the likelihood of a full-blown global trade war is growing. Singapore has decided not to impose retaliatory tariffs. Doing so will only lead to increased cost for Singaporeans. But other countries may not be guided by the same considerations and may have different perceptions and views. China has already imposed retaliatory tariffs on US goods. Others, like the European Union, are considering their next steps. Some think that the new tariffs are a negotiating tactic, a negotiating tool by the US to extract concessions in other areas. This was what President Richard Nixon did in 1971. He slapped a 10% surcharge on imports to pressure Germany and Japan to devalue their currencies, and when they did, the tariffs came off. Indeed, there is a brief window for countries to negotiate and get some reprieve from the US before the higher tariffs take effect. And it may be possible for some rates to be lowered. But we have to be realistic. Once trade barriers go up, they tend to stay up. Rolling them back is much harder, even after the original rationale no longer applies. Even if some partial accommodations are eventually worked out, the uncertainty generated by such a drastic move will dampen global confidence and growth. It will be very hard to restore the previous status quo. And in particular, it doesn't look like the 10% universal rate is open for negotiation.
He was right about that.
Seems to be the fixed minimum tariff, regardless of a country's trade balance or existing trade arrangements. Furthermore, there are other forces that could maintain the momentum for tariffs. In particular, many European countries are eager to protect their critical industries like electric vehicles, green technologies, and semiconductors from Chinese competition. They do not want to be a dumping ground for exports from China or other countries. There is also a growing push across the West to strengthen their domestic manufacturing capabilities and to reduce dependence on global supply chains, especially in strategic industries. So this round of tariff increases by the US may just be the beginning of more increases to come globally. And we've seen this play out before. The US enacted sweeping tariff increases through the Smoot-Hawley Act in 1930. Many countries protested, and a number retaliated with their own trade restrictions and tariffs. This deepened and extended the Great Depression. In some ways, today's risk may be greater. The new US tariffs, if fully enacted, are higher than the ones in Smoot-Hawley. Trade is now a much bigger part of the American and global economy compared to the 1930s. Supply chains are also more deeply connected than they were back then.
True. I've said that before. I've said it's not even 1930 anymore. It's going to be, even back then, if it did that much damage, think how much damage it would do now in our globalized world.
Any disruption to trade flows will have wider knock-on effects on the world. This brings me to the third point, which is the impact on the global economy. Business and consumer confidence has already been hit by the tariffs. International trade and investments will suffer. Our economic agencies got in touch with several multinational enterprises and local businesses after the tariff announcement. Even those who were not directly affected by the tariffs are worried about weakening demand from their consumers. Some have put new projects on hold while they assess the full implications of the tariffs. These are reactions from companies based here, but I'm sure the same conversations are happening in boardrooms elsewhere.
If you owe IRS back taxes,
come on, bro.
but
Sam, are the headphones new? I've never known. I've had these for years. And I've worn them on stream many, many times.
Over the recent days, we have seen sharp negative reactions in global stock markets. It is too early to tell if all this will spill over into the real economy, but the downside risks are clearly rising. What's troubling is not just the tariffs themselves, which are already damaging, but the fact that this new wave of protectionism is unpredictable and unstable. Protectionism is already bad. Unstable protectionism is even worse. Businesses don't know what to expect. Many are holding back, fearful that changing rules will leave them with stranded assets. And all this creates an environment of deep uncertainty, one that could tip both the US and global economy into recession. The consequences extend far beyond economics. More and more countries are turning away from win-win cooperation and deeper integration. Instead, we see a rising me-first, win-lose mindset, where it's every...
I agree. This is boring. Sorry, guys. It was a fine speech, but nothing crazy.
sector by employment. We support more than 22.3 million jobs across the country. That's not something that folks think of when they think about food, beverage, household, and personal care manufacturers. They're typically used to think of domestic manufacturing as the steel industry, the auto industry, these other sectors. So we have a unique perspective on the tariffs. What we have consistently called for is this administration to really fine-tune its approach. Obviously, we are here for America first as a relation.
Anyways. Dennis says there's a difference between negotiations and extortion, and the difference in this situation is its impact on future generations. I think that's a fair point. Origin told you, you've only been watching me for a month? Is that true? That Singaporean PM seemed very smart, but it was a tad boring. No offense to whoever suggested that, but it was a tad boring. Maybe Trump saw the power of the memes coming out of China with fat Americans at the sewing table. Were there memes like that? I haven't seen that. I want to see those memes. Can you send them to me? lickman.sam@gmail.com. Send those to me. I want to see those memes. I don't know what this guy's saying. Did you hear China roast JD? No. What did they say? China roast JD Vance. They called him a hillbilly? No, they didn't. Do you have proof of this? I need to see this. I need to see this now. Here's a funny meme. I make a stupid decision, something really bad happens, I convince my followers the problem is now magically solved, I reverse my stupid decision. There's something to this meme, guys. Hello, trolls. You've been here for a minute, right? I thought I saw you on earlier. Maybe not. China memes link sent. Heck yeah, I can't wait to see this. Oh, heck yeah, bro. Oh, I don't see it in my email. Did it go to my spam? I don't see it. Politico says AOC leads Schumer in head-to-head New York primary matchup by double digits. Too bad his next election isn't until 2028. Is that true? AOC leads Schumer. Oh, this is days old, but looks like you're right. Looks like you are correct. Shocking poll shows AOC leading Schumer in hypothetical primary. Do it, AOC. Do it. I see no email with these memes. So I see no email memes. What is this? Man's caught in firestorm after he said something about Chinese peasants.
Over US Vice President J.D. Vance's recent comments about, quote, Chinese peasants. On Tuesday, Beijing slammed Vance for his comments that have drawn widespread ire and ridicule on China's internet in comparisons with Vance's own self-proclaimed hillbilly background. Our Will Ripley has the story.
This is kind of funny.
Well, good morning, everybody. The American hillbilly versus China's so-called peasants. It all started with this.
And to make it a little bit more crystal clear, we borrow money from Chinese peasants to buy the things those Chinese peasants manufacture. From Chinese peasants.
Vance's Chinese peasants comment reaching Beijing within hours. The government's response, swift and scathing.
Effin' Music Man says, Vance is such a turd, no doubt. I mean, it's just, could this be more ironic? A man who wrote a book literally called Hillbilly Elegy is trying to talk down on quote-unquote peasants.
It's both astonishing and lamentable to hear this vice president make such ignorant and disrespectful remarks.
On China's tightly controlled internet, government censors are allowed.
It is pretty disrespectful, there's no doubt.
Allowing Vance's interview to go viral, amplifying the outrage, igniting anger and sarcasm. Have you said thank you for the money we lent you? A reference to China being the second largest foreign holder of U.S. government debt, and that infamous Oval Office exchange with Ukraine's president.
You should be thanking the president.
One hashtag about the
Turd.
Chinese peasants remark.
Now we're defending China? I'm not defending China. I'm just saying this to categorize the working class of China as peasants is disrespectful. I'm not defending China.
Got to the top of China's Twitter-like platform Weibo.
I've said many, many times that the Chinese Communist Party is really bad, terrible. VKM says, with how he's screwing over the poor, Vance could be writing a hillbilly eulogy in a few years. Wow, that was a good one, VKM. Vance is so not authentic, he keeps stepping in it, no doubt.
With millions of views and counting, many comments boasting of China's modern achievements. Look, this is their true face, arrogant and rude as always. We may be peasants, but we have the world's best high-speed rail, the most powerful logistics, and leading AI and drone technologies. Aren't such peasants quite impressive? Former Global Times editor Hu Xijin posted on Weibo, this true peasant who came out of rural America seems to lack perspective. Many people are urging him to visit China and see reality with his own eyes. Many in China are interpreting Vance's comments as describing all Chinese people. Some even referencing Vance's memoir and movie.
How many times have you seen this?
As one social media post put it, the author of Hillbilly Elegy is calling Chinese peasants? Really?
Every time.
Incidentally, Hillbilly Elegy was translated into Mandarin. It's actually a bestseller in China. But the vice president...
What? It's a bestseller in China? That's disappointing. What's the exact definition of a peasant? A poor farmer of low social status who owns or rents a small piece of land for cultivation. So it's not even accurate. If he's talking about Chinese folks who manufacture goods, it seems like a peasant specifically speaks about a farmer. So he didn't even use the word correctly.
President's soundbite has spiraled into yet another war of words between the U.S. and China. Many Chinese are calling his remark proof of what they call American arrogance, as if U.S.-China tensions weren't bad enough over things like tariffs, technology, Taiwan. CNN has...
Rachel says, we have poor people in America living in squalor too. Take a drive into Appalachia. Right. And the point is, you don't want to talk down to... And again, I just looked up the definition. He wasn't even accurate with his definition. But in commonplace, peasant is often used by snobs, even for people who aren't simply upper class.
Has reached out to J.D. Vance's office for comment, and so far, nothing. Will Ripley, CNN, Taipei.
Well, China now facing 104.
We know all this, guys. Kitty Cat says peasant is commonly used as an insult in England when they want to call someone ignorant or ill-mannered. Peasants belong to the land they are owned. Yeah, I mean, it seems peasants is either a derogatory term or it's directly referencing to some sort of tenant farmer situation. So what are you going to do? Here's the Kevin O'Leary calling for 400% on China. Someone brought this up earlier, right?
We go into a... What happens if we go into a full-scale trade war?
Look, it's really ugly. This president won the election based on reducing costs, but he's enacted the largest tax increase we've seen in over 50 years. And you know who's going to pay the price? Americans shopping at Walmart, Americans shopping at Costco. We don't know the purpose of these tariffs. The only thing we do know is he's planning on taking tax revenue from Americans paying more at Walmart and Costco and putting that into tax cuts for the wealthiest Americans.
That's what I'm most afraid of. Portnoy was on CNN. Oh my God. I'll take a look at that.
It's totally gross. And
Rachel says, I think it was an insulting thing to say, and if they hit him back with calling him a hillbilly, it's fair game. There's a race car at the White House right now.
It's putting us on the brink of a recession. It could cost us tons of manufacturing jobs as we get into this trade war. It's a really disturbing policy. I hope he backs off.
I'm starting to get sick of Kevin O'Leary. Just some rich guy thinking he can explain everything about the economy, and he's all-knowing about everything money, and I don't know.
But Kevin, he said there's a lot of deals that they're literally kissing his ass was the phrase he used, very eloquently. Where are the deals?
104% tariffs on China are not enough. I'm advocating 400%. I do business in China. They don't play by the rules. They've been in the WTO for decades. They have never abided by any of the rules they agreed to when they came in for decades. They cheat, they steal IP. I can't litigate in their courts. They take product, technology, they steal it, they manufacture it, sell it back.
Jason says the majority of Chinese people are not the party and are generally wonderfully hardworking people. It's like comparing the Rivian drivers to the Cybertruck drivers. That's why I'm very clear when I talk about China. I say I do not like the CCP because I believe in most countries the people are good, willing people, China included. I love China. I have many, many close friends from China.
Here, never has an administration.
400% tariffs? What would that
I
look
want
like?
Xi on an airplane to Washington to level the playing field. It's just not about tariffs anymore. Nobody has taken on China yet, not the Europeans, no administration for decades. As someone who actually does business there, I've had enough. I speak for millions of Americans who have IP that have been stolen by the Chinese. I have nothing against the Chinese people. They brought great literacy, art, and tech to the world.
Sam, you need coffee? I don't drink coffee. I just yawn the day away.
The government cheats and steals, and finally, an administration, you may not like Trump, you may not like his style or his rhetoric, finally, an administration that puts up and says enough. 400% tariffs tomorrow morning. He'll tell you why. Xi can only stay the supreme leader if people are employed. If we wipe out any business there, because we are still 39% of all consumables on Earth and 25% of the world's GDP, America is the #1 economy on Earth with all the cards. We will not have that forever. It's time to squeeze Chinese heads into the wall now.
Well,
I'm
hold
not
on
talking
a
about
second,
tariffs
Kevin.
on
Well,
60
I hear you, but hold on. If we're talking about people, the average consumer, not necessarily.
Again, he just spoke like a bully. He didn't back up his 400% tariff with any sort of, like, what does that mean? What is going to happen? Yeah, he wants to fight back against Xi in China. Okay, but what does that look like, and how will that play out?
The head honchos of businesses all across the globe, can they withstand the pressure of that sort of tax on the goods?
It's short-lived. There will be.
But what's your timeline compared to, you don't know the average American's
Good question, Laura.
timeline, what they can actually survive. There's people right now who can't survive.
400% tomorrow morning, Xi's on an airplane to Washington to cut a deal.
What do you think?
Here's the thing, though. This is the perfect example.
I mean, 100, 400. I mean, at the point you're at triple digits, I don't think 400 is going to make any difference. If he's not on a plane at 104, I don't know if 400. It's bad versus worse, right?
Example of, I understand how it would benefit you, but that's not what the American people voted for. They voted because Trump said within 24 hours costs will come down.
Trump supporters, by the way, you're talking about.
Well,
Especially.
Trump said that and there were people in the middle who said, okay.
That's a good point too. Yeah, he ran on tariffs, but he also ran on taking costs down. He also ran on, glorious stock market numbers.
Hey, I'm going to vote for that. He also said he'd end the wars. That's not happening. We still have supply chain issues. So I just filled up my tank yesterday. Gas prices are not down. Rent.
Robert Barons, they just don't wear top hats. Very good point, Dennis. BB says O'Leary is a clown.
Groceries prices are not.
Politica Pal says Trump ran a phony campaign. I mean, there's no doubt about that. Jason says, during the Cultural Revolution, Chairman Mao favored the farmers over the more educated, similar to what's going on now. And it turns out those farmers were the so-called hillbillies who supported him. Top 2 issues on Election Day for MAGA were costs and immigration. Sam, I'm so tired. Please end this tariff nightmare. Me? What the hell am I supposed to do? I'm just a regular dude, bro.
Down. And when people are looking what's happening in the markets and they see the uncertainty and they see their 401ks, I had to listen to my mom talk about her investments on Sunday and she's nervous. I get it. On top of that, though, don't forget, tomorrow we're going to have a vote on a budget that is going to be also another series of cuts for the American people and a little bit of gamesmanship, as you were saying, so that we can sort of pay for the tax cuts for folks like Kevin. Then we've also got DOGE, and we've got the impact that the DOGE cuts and the cuts in jobs are actually having on economies around the country. So it's when you layer all that together, and I think what you saw over last weekend is people don't want to wait anymore. People are angry. I mean, we saw incredible turnout over the weekend in rallies all across the country. We're seeing it in the polls. People are frustrated.
I want to bring this into real terms as well. I mean, I'm an everyday person. I'm saying that right now. So when I think about how much things cost, I want to know things I'm going to afford or not afford. Listen to what somebody who's a furniture store owner in Kansas had to say about, say,
I like that Laura's bringing it back down to earth rather than Kevin O'Leary, who's like, we have to fight China, we have to fight Xi. It's like, okay, what does that mean? What is the outcome of that?
With the 54%, if we sell a sofa for $1,000, we will have to sell it for $1,299. And if it's 104%, then that sofa will be...
This guy, where's this guy from? Is he German?
over $2,000. I don't think they can afford it.
Zolan, that's a real figure for a lot of people. A $2,000 couch as opposed to what they thought they were going to spend?
Yeah, that means higher prices for average Americans. And by the way, that's what Republicans in Congress right now are also worried about here. Hearing from their constituents at town halls and as the weeks go by, if consumer prices go up, that economic frustration then turning into political backlash against them and the administration.
Kevin's point is that it's short-lived. What's your reaction?
Well, I mean, it's up to debate whether it's actually going to be short-lived at this point.
Exactly.
And consumer prices going up. Again, economists say U.S. importers do pay the price of tariffs. That then goes down to the consumer. Also, one thing that is consistent right now is uncertainty. There's uncertainty right now. And this gamble that the administration is doing that the average American will be able to weather through any type of economic frustration is bet on the idea that you'll then have investment in American manufacturing. Tough to pair investment with uncertainty.
So where does consumer confidence factor into all this? If people are nervous about what they can or cannot afford, how about that short-lived proposition?
I mean, it's plummeting. And I think the only way we're going to restore it is if Congress takes back the car keys from the president and takes away his power to impose the largest tax cut in 50 years with the stroke of a pen. That's the only way that people are going to have confidence. If he announces a series of deals tomorrow, what's going to happen? In a month from now, nobody's going to have any confidence that this is going to go away. As long as he has, basically the gun on the Resolute desk, American consumers, businesses are all at risk as long as...
Origins and Tall Tales says, tariffs on Mars. That planet needs to pay us back for our investment. No doubt. Bernie on CNN Town Hall tonight going to be fire.
It's there.
Oh, we're talking about, obviously, sofas, but how about iPhones, which many people have. There's this notion of making it in the United States. Talk to me about that, Kevin. What is the likelihood that that could actually happen? There are people who are saying, fat chance.
Moving manufacturing back to the U.S. takes a long time, but I'm still focused on two aspects. I mean, you have to differentiate the tariffs negotiated between countries, because the Eurozone just 48 hours ago said something remarkable. For the first time in decades, we're willing to go to 0 on 0. That means they open up all markets to all products, all services. That's a huge win. So forget about Israel or, Thailand.
See, he doesn't care about bringing jobs back to the U.S.
Or Cambodia. We're talking about one of the largest economies on earth saying, okay, we get the joke. You want to sell cars, you want to sell a Corvette in Berlin, we're okay at 0. We've never had that before, so let's call that a huge win. We haven't done the deal yet, but let's get the German people over here to start negotiating that. Agriculture in Britain will go to 0 on 0. Canada, we'll love to do energy 0 on 0. So that's a huge win for him.
0 on 0, that sounds good, but I feel like the reality of the math isn't. Again, we're talking about, I don't know. He talks in such generalities.
Huge. He
But
hasn't
I
even
thought he
taken
said
advantage of it yet.
I thought, Kevin, part of it, this is...
Whoa, that's socialism. Yeah.
I'm curious...
Trump just announced new tariffs on air guitars. Says too many people are pretending to play, but not paying their fair share. It's on CNN. EU and Japan avoid U.S. cars due to their size, and EU avoids U.S. foods due to food safety laws. Good points.
From your perspective, and everyone, if one of the biggest assets of a negotiation is leverage, if he has said they're here to stay, does that remove some of the ability for him to negotiate in the long run with these countries?
Well, I'm trying to differentiate between the trade non-parity. For example, you talk about Thailand. I have a company that makes greeting cards. Hewlett-Packard laser cutters making greeting cards in Thailand because labor is cheap, and we FedEx them every day here. They only have an economy of 35 billion, and the deficit is 200 billion. That country will never have trade parity with us. It's too small.
Right. Okay. Now he's finally making sense.
But we can go to zero tariffs with them. And I'm telling you, there's a difference between getting everybody at 0 on 0, which is free trade, basically, which for Trump would be a huge win.
Yeah, this is what O'Leary really wants, is completely unregulated free trade. That's what rich people like him want. And it helps him a lot.
All 48 hours ago, when the Eurozone said, okay, uncle, we'll go to 0, take that win. It's a huge win. Now,
So why didn't they take it when they offered it? That's another thing I don't understand. People are saying that Vietnam came with a 0 offer. Why didn't they take it? Tontos is trying to bring back manufacturing industry to the U.S. is moot. We'll probably get many jobs will probably get automated. We should educate our people so they can work in STEM industries with less of a chance of automation. That's a good point.
Trade deficits settled, that's going to take decades because we are the largest economy on earth by a factor of 2.5 times. We're always going to have deficits.
I also want to zoom out because I do think it's worth noting that there are many in Congress as well as the business community that are questioning if the White House and specifically the president is even ready and in a position to negotiate.
The Home Depot co-founder made a comment on saying something like, I'm quoting here, I don't understand the goddamn formula. I believe he's been poorly advised by his advisors about this trade situation and this formula they're applying. You already see a tension between Musk and Navarro.
That's right. And that's not it. There's been mixed messages from different aides, some that are saying, that they do want negotiations.
Trump is speaking by the race car. Is that true? I don't know if I want to hear him just speak by a race car. All right, folks. It's time for 10 squats. Let's get it. Everybody get up and do 10 squats. They say 10 squats every 45 minutes is as good as like an hour-long walk. All right. Here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. All right, someone let me know when 45 minutes is passed again. Oh, damn it. Too many wires. Oops. Oopsie. Marveloso says, I don't know how anyone can be middle class and vote Republican. This was literally a scheme to make the rich richer. Fair point. Bonnie says, please, Sam, no Trump today. All right, no Trump. I didn't put him up. What about a one-leg squat, a pistol squat? I don't know if I can quite do that. Uncle, he should have been disqualified to run from any office for being a convicted felon. That's not the way it works in the U.S. What about push-ups? Every 30 minutes, we should all do a minute or two of squats, be a Lichtman stream tradition. I agree. Michael Nightwolf is here, and he says, President Trump and the terrible case of tariffs. Yeah, no doubt. Are you going to play the friendly neighborhood? You mean Spider-Man today? I wasn't planning on it, but I could. Maybe. Possibly. Maybe, possibly, maybe. I have to... VKM says, as an aside, 2003 to 2013 and 2013 to 2023, Maryland congressional maps are hilarious. Yeah, I've seen them before. They're pretty bad. And Dems did those, so, you know, Dems aren't perfect either, folks. The best Spider-Man is Andrew Garfield. I haven't seen that one, to be honest with you, but just my gut's telling me that that's not the case. But what do I know? I never got the Chinese memes. Sad. Very sad. Origins and Tall Tales says, I think the best Spider-Man is the animated show one. Which one is that? Tom Holland is unfit. To be honest, I think I've only seen the Miles Morales animated ones and Tobey Maguire OG one. I don't think I've seen Tom Holland or Andrew Garfield. TBH, that stands for to be honest, guys, if you didn't know that. I see this headline that says, Marjorie Taylor busted in massive tariff insider trading. Is that true? Oh, here's Dave Portnoy. I think Jesse Eisenberg would be a good pick for a future Spider-Man. He's too old now. Maybe like 10 years ago he would have been good, but
In case you're not well acquainted with my next guest, Dave Portnoy is the founder and owner of Barstool Sports, a wildly successful media company with a particular appeal to young men, a demographic that helped Donald Trump win back the White House. Barstool Sports has nearly 50 million followers on TikTok, publishes some of the most popular podcasts in the country. Now, Portnoy's followers get a steady stream of sports content, financial advice, pizza reviews, and unfiltered and some say offensive conversations. In recent days, he has gone viral for comments about tariffs imposed by President Trump, whom Portnoy supports. Dave Portnoy joins me now. Thank you so much for being here. You have been openly questioning the president's tariff strategy. I want our viewers to
hello, Maria,
to see and hear what you said on Monday.
I went super viral when I said I lost $7 million. I'd kill to be back to losing $7 million. I haven't even looked. If I had to guess, I'm down in these last 3 days, probably close to 20.
Boo-hoo.
I don't know, like 10, 15% of my net worth, poof. But I'm still here. That's the game. That's what I'm in. Like, do I like it? No. Am I crying? Am I like, oh, woe is me. I wish I voted for Kamala? No. Do I wish this didn't go down like this? Yes.
Now, you obviously voted for President Trump. You also said that you think he's a smart guy. You are willing to give him a couple of days or even a couple of weeks. Where are you now?
So it's uncomfortable. Anytime the stock market is like this and you're invested in it, it's certainly uncomfortable. But I stand with it. You know, he ran on tariffs. He said he was a tariff fan. And I don't pretend to be an economist. I don't think I realized that we'd have this market crash. I don't think most people did.
I think most people did.
But I think he believes in what he's doing.
See, that's what you have when you got like a guy like this who doesn't understand economics or politics, going out and influencing people to vote for Trump. And then he's like, well, no one knew that tariffs would impact the economy is like this. It's like, no, people knew, bro.
And trying to basically strong arm China and get better deals for the U.S. I'm willing to still give him time. I think the big date is the midterms, which is a long time out. But I do think that in this country, the number one issue, no matter what is going on, is the economy. And if the stock market doesn't show some signs of rebound or rebounding by then, I think people will speak with their vote. So, but I'm still... He was pretty straightforward that I'm tariffs. I don't like China. I'm going to do all this stuff. He's doing what he ran on. So to turn around just because we've had 3 or 4.
Again, I take issue with this idea is that, like, he ran on tariffs. What do you expect? He also ran on this glorious economy, lowering costs, you know, being the best economic president of all time, you know. And he says so much bullshit to say that he ran on tariffs, no questions asked. It's like, it's much deeper than that.
For bad days in the stock market, super uncomfortable. My bigger thing at this point is, let's not pretend it's not a major issue. Like it is, and you can't separate. I don't think I saw the Treasury Secretary Bassett today, like separating Main Street and Wall Street.
Yes, he did.
They're pretty connected. Yeah, they're pretty connected in my book. So I don't know if he's just talking about the super fat cats.
I think he makes a good point there too. Not two, but I think he makes a fair point there. This idea that Besson is saying is like, oh, it's only hurting the investor class. It's like, dude, the whole country is now connected to the stock market, pretty much.
But if the stock market's tanking, we are going to have an economic meltdown over the long term. So I'm still going to give him time. He said, I think Trump said, you know, it was a sick patient. He needed to take medicine. I'm taking my medicine, and I don't like my medicine, but I'm willing to take it. I voted for him. And in a way, it's disingenuous now to be like, hey, what are you doing with these tariffs? Because he did make it pretty clear he was a tariff guy.
He did.
Maybe you should have looked into it more, Dave.
No question about it. There's being a tariff guy and then doing it the way he is doing.
Good point, Dana.
Proceeding the way he is proceeding. You comfortable with that too? Not just the policy, but the process through which he is imposing this policy?
I certainly wish he would give maybe a victory here or there right now. Like, he has the power really to turn the stock market and get it ripping. And when there's been a fake rumor or a misquote, like he's going to postpone the tariffs or whatever, if he would come out and say, hey, we did this great agreement with Japan or Vietnam, the stock market would rip. I firmly believe that. Instead, what do you say? Everyone's kissing his ass last night. But that's Trump. Like, that is how he speaks, and it does resonate in a way to people. Like, I'd almost rather feel like I'm getting straight talking, and I can't change. It's like, that's always who he's been. Do I wish maybe he was treating our friends a little nicer, our allies, and things like that? Yeah, because I'm in the stock market, but at the same time,
one thing I will give Dave credit for is I think it's healthy to criticize someone you voted for, and you know, I'm getting a little frustrated with all these articles. It's like Trump supporters having buyer's remorse. Let's interview this one Trump supporter who. It's like, you're allowed to not like everything about the person you're voted for. You know,
this is who I voted for, and time is going to bear it out. He's playing an extremely high risk game of poker, and if it turns out great,
Lily says, I'm sick of the "that's just Trump" line. Why is the bar so low for him? That's a fair. I agree with you.
it'll be a great move and one of the great things that he's done. If not, I think the voters will speak at midterms.
There is a
That's fair.
long time, Dave, between now and the midterms, particularly when you think about how quickly things have changed just even in the past couple of weeks with the economy. You're okay. You can just stomach this until, if it continues where it is, until the midterms?
If we drop 5% every day from here to the midterms, no, I can't stomach that. Nobody's going to stomach that. If this flattens out and we don't have gigantic drops and it doesn't keep dropping to that effect, yes, I can handle that for a long time. If it every day we're going through crazy, I thought today would be worse than it was because today was the deadline and the market is unpredictable. So if we've bottomed out or gotten close to bottom out, yeah, I can live with that. I can live with that proposition. And again, do I love everything? Like, did I love that he was on the golf course, when the stock market was tanking? No. But if he could sit around and say, you know what? Like, he's almost in a box where if he can't show weakness in these negotiations. So you can't just run now that the market is bad, because then all of this would have been for nothing.
Ruth says Trump is our world's version of Game of Thrones Littlefinger. That's a fair point. Trump is employing a psychological strategy called DARVO, deny, attack, and reverse victim and offender. Lily says he can live with it because he's a millionaire. What about regular people? Does no one care about them? We care about them here on the Sam Lickman channel, Lily.
So I'm hoping his art of the deal comes to fruition. But no, if you're asking me, can I wait a year and a half with the stock market tanking 5% every day or 4% or 3%? No, I don't think anybody can.
Yeah, no one can.
You have talked about the midterms a lot and about the fact that Democrats could or maybe should win big if we are where we are then.
Troll says, I think Trump's more of a Joffrey. That's a good question. Well, maybe we'll do that analysis. Which Game of Thrones character is Trump?
Which is a very big if. Could you see yourself supporting Democrats?
Yeah, absolutely. One thing about me, which drives me crazy, I vote for Trump. I support him. I was never like some crazy MAGA guy. Like I look at each candidate and I choose who I like. I think the left.
Did you though? Because you said you didn't even understand that tariffs would have an economic damaging effect. So did you sit there and look at each candidate and do your research? I'm a little skeptical. I think you just gravitated towards Trump because he represented some sort of masculine brand that you also want to represent.
And a lot of even what they did with, I want to say, hiding Biden's mental state and not having a primary really drove me to the right. So I
That's what you base your decision on, bro? Hiding Biden's mental state and not having a primary? Come on, dude.
I am not somebody who would just strictly vote based on Republican or Democrat. I vote on the people running, how I think they speak to me, the issues that are important to me. But yes, I will vote how I feel is the best interest of what I believe in.
That's fair.
Have said and do continue to say things that many people find offensive, but other people come to you for those controversial things that you talk about, especially young men. And we talk a lot about young men as it sort of relates to politics on the show, on Inside Politics. Knowing your audience the way you do you think that they will stick with Donald Trump the way you are for now?
Yes, I don't think people are bailing ship now. It's way too early. Now, again, I think a lot of people who follow me are interested in the stock market. I think when you hear, Wall Street, Main Street, there's a major shift that has happened, I would say, 4 or 5 years, but
I don't know. This Wall Street, Main Street thing, let's be honest, Main Street doesn't exist anymore. It doesn't really exist. If you go through main streets in America, if you walk through Santa Monica or you go through Kansas City or, Des Moines, what are their main streets full of? Mostly corporate restaurants and boutique shops. Most people use Amazon or Walmart delivery services or DoorDash. It's uncomfortable to talk about, but it's kind of true.
The average person can invest in the stock market now. Like, it's a lot harder. 20 years ago, when you needed a broker, you can just go to Robinhood, log on. People are buying crypto, they're buying stock.
That's true.
So it's far more intertangled, and I think a lot of people care about it, but I don't think people are jumping ship right now. And one thing,
even a lot of small businesses in the U.S. that are doing well are online businesses. So you could almost argue that Main Street has turned into E Street. You know what I mean?
that I really can't think or can't be underestimated. And I even say it now. Like, I get more hate, and I've always gotten more hate and more extreme hate from the left than I've gotten from the right. And this is before people knew what side I was on.
That's because they were pretty sure what side you were on, bro.
I find the left personally far more intolerant than I do the right.
Who cares what your personal experience is, bro? That doesn't mean anything. And I'm not defending the left. The left is plenty intolerant, but
obviously that may be because the right perceives me as
bingo
leaning towards their side. But yeah, we're really, when you say, are people going to switch? People in my shoes, I really feel like believe we don't have a spot in the Democratic Party right now. If I went through my mentions, people are calling me really, like, and I don't post it, but like nasty things like I'm sexist, I'm racist, I'm this, I'm that. I, again, would invite anybody to go really dig into what I've said and what I've done in the past, and there's just nothing to add up to that, but the hate I get is extreme.
Yeah.
Yeah, but you can't equate internet trolls to a political party necessarily. I mean, who knows who the hell these people are?
Well, hopefully you'll come back and we can talk about, you were discussing the Democratic Party. Right after the election, I played a soundbite of you talking about the fact that Democrats have a moral superiority complex for David Axelrod, and he's a pretty important Democrat in the party, and he said he agreed with you. So
yeah, that's a fair point.
We can talk about that. Just one last question, yes or no. Has Donald Trump reached out to you since you've been talking about the tariffs?
No. Nope.
Okay.
I don't even know. I don't think he has my number, but no.
He has ways. Dave Portnoy, thank you so much.
It wouldn't change. Yeah, it wouldn't change how I felt, but thank you. Appreciate it.
Dave Porkboy, everybody. Sorry. I shouldn't make fun of him. What's his net worth like? I mean, he's not even, he's obviously compared to your average person. He's very rich. But Dave Portnoy net worth 100 million. He owns 3 personal properties that are valued at 65 million. God damn. He is a Nantucket resident, a Miami residence, and a Montauk residence. God damn. BB says internet hate is not equal to legislative hate. The right does. Trans executive orders gutting civil rights legislation. Extremely good point. There's a race car in front of the White House because he was meeting with racing champions. Let's do an analysis. Game of Thrones characters. Which character is Donald Trump? Robert Baratheon? No. Tyrion? No. Cersei? No. Caitlin Stark, definitely not. Jamie, no. Viserys? Probably not. Jon Snow, no. No. Joffrey, I don't know. Joffrey has such a punk attitude. Trump is, he just feels very different timelines. You know what I mean? Rickson, no. Or Recon, no. Sam, no. Renly, no. Roz, that's my favorite character. No. I don't even remember who this guy is. Is he the leader of the people of the people at the wall? No. He's Hodor. We figured it out, guys. He's Hodor. Oh, this is just introduced in season 1. Why can't we get the full list? Oh, introduced in season 2. Here we go. Tywin. Hodor, but with power. Stannis. Dustin says, I'm talking about the guy who was feeding the babies to the White Walkers. Who was that? I don't remember. He's Gilly. He's Melisandre. He's Tormund. He's Oberyn. Alright, is this funny anymore? I don't know if there's an equivalent to Trump in Game of Thrones. Colin says, I don't understand why the stock markets are up despite the fact there are still 10% tariffs. It's just a buy low thing. You know, people are just trying to make sure that they buy low, and now they're afraid, oh, they're going to go up a little bit, so a bunch of people buy, and then the stock market boosts. I don't know if there's an equivalent to Trump in Game of Thrones. Call. Joffrey. Maybe if Joffrey, spoiler alert, if Joffrey lived to be a full-grown adult, maybe he would be Trump. But I don't know. I'm not really feeling a comparison between Joffrey and Trump. The only other person I can really think is Tywin. But I feel like Tywin is too smart to be Trump. Jason says, I think Tywin is closest and Don Jr. is Joffrey. He's too cool. You think Tywin is cool? I think Tywin is probably the closest. Let's do a poll. Which got character is Trump? I think we've decided it's either Joffrey or Tywin, right? Or the third option can be haven't watched God. Oh, I should have done other. Here, I'm going to do that again. Sorry, folks. Which got character is Trump? Joffrey, Tywin, other, haven't watched. Okay. Man, we need a new season of House of the Dragon. Anybody a House of the Dragon fan out there? I feel like that's the only good show I've seen in a long time recently. Littlefinger? No, Littlefinger is too cunning and smart to be Trump. Where's Littlefinger? And I don't think Littlefinger is rich. He has to be like some rich guy. And also Littlefinger is always, everything he does is because of like, he's damaged goods from his love of what's her name. And Trump ain't got no love, you know what I mean? Where is he? Why don't I see him in this? Tywin was a strong character. I wouldn't say Trump can measure up. Yeah, I hear that. Well, then vote other. Where's Littlefinger? Am I passing him and just not noticing? Was he not introduced in season 1 or 2? He was season 1. Where is he? They left him off the list. He's not on here. They just left him off. Tywin Lannister is so much smarter than Trump. I said that. I'll show you who Trump is. No, he's not cool enough to even be the White Walker King. Yeah, he was in season 1. Confusing. Trump is Baron Harkonnen, y'all, but dumber. Who's that? I don't remember who that is. Baron Harkonnen. Oh, from Dune. No, you know who Trump is? He's Fisk from Spider-Man. He's this guy. He's Dudley from Harry Potter. That's not a bad one. Elon is Voldemort. Who is Elon? Elon might be Joffrey, honestly. No. VKM says, in my opinion, Trump somehow mixes Voldemort in morals, Umbridge in desire for control, and Peter Pettigrew in betrayal/cowardice. I get what you're saying. Elon is Ramsey? Maybe. Yeah. Elon is Elon from Iron Man 2. Elon isn't cunning enough to be Ramsey. Here's, I just found a post of Trump taking credit for the stock market collapse or rebound.
Yeah, that's up. You got the market seeing your brilliance. Yeah, that's up almost 7 points. 2,500 points. Nobody's ever heard of it. It's going to be a record. Amazing. Yeah.
Amazing. Gotta be a record. You caused the dip, bro. That's like digging a hole and then filling it up and be like, wow, look how much this hole has filled. You dug the hole, bro.
You make an announcement the next time. Yes, sir. Smart.
That's so funny. We called it, guys. We called it. Did you hear that Elon got bullied by gamers on live stream and rage quit? Yeah, I did see that. Dustin says, ever since Mike Myers doesn't want SNL, always think of Elon as Dr. Evil from Austin Powers. That's funny. God, the Dow went up. These numbers are crazy, man. Myers is making a comeback. Hell yeah, I love Mike Myers. Troll says, politics is so easy to understand. I think I'm average IQ individual, but with Trump and Elon, it's so easy to comprehend. Yeah, I don't think politics is rocket scientists. Maybe some of the policy decisions they have to make are harder, but they usually just bring in experts to explain it to them, politicians. Connecting with people is the hard part of politics. Ruth Marie says, I got the got analogy to Littlefinger from a famous monologue he did. Chaos is a ladder. That's pretty Trump-like. The poll was a great idea. Well, right now, haven't watched is winning, and the two choices we gave are tied. Only 31 votes, but 51 people watching, so make sure you get your votes in. When is Walmart going to run out of crap? Like 3 months? That's a good question. But now the tariffs are gone, except for China. So who the hell knows, dude? Is Trump speaking today? Does anybody know? Sam, can you explain what would have been your ideal election scenario? What do you mean by that exactly? Wow, what a recovery. So amazing. It's like you see this hole, bro. You see this massive divot? You created that, to give you a golf analogy. Have I seen the movie The Apprentice? I didn't end up seeing that, no. wonder what Trump is going to say. Of course, he's going to. We all know. We already said what he's going to do. He's going to brag about, saving the stock market. What's that? Aaron Burnett breaks out a whiteboard to explain Trump's tariff math. That's interesting.
Nyman. Joining me now is Brent Nyman. He's an economist and former Treasury official in the Biden administration. His research was cited by the Trump White House, really to help them justify the reciprocal tariff rates. So they said, look at this research, look at this. This is where we get this crucial number that gets us to these stratospheric tariff rates. So, Brent, I really appreciate your taking the time here. I just want to start off with you because we've got the math, and I've spent a lot of today. I've got my, going through the math. Sorry, I'm just holding it up for people that we were going through. So you see these high tariff rates, and Trump's sitting there on the screen, and it's scrolling by country after country after country, and you see your works used to justify them. What did you think in that moment?
Yeah, thanks, Aaron, for having me on the show. I was on Wednesday of last week, I was in a University of Chicago macroeconomics seminar, and my phone started blowing up with those pictures of the president in the Rose Garden with that screen with really big numbers and, many more countries listed.
Squat time in 5 minutes. All right. Thank you, Dennis. I appreciate that.
Than I thought. And so, with apologies to the speaker, I couldn't really focus. And then the next day, I woke up and there was a bunch of emails from journalists in my inbox, and a former colleague had posted that they released the methodology explaining what they had done to calculate these tariffs. And they had cited, not many papers, and one of them was a paper I wrote together with Alberto Cavallo, Geeta Gopinath, and Jenny Tang.
That's so funny. This is the guy they cited.
So I started digging in and looking at, how my work could have possibly informed this policy, which I really think is a terrible policy. So I ended up writing an op-ed on it, and I think it's been well received so far.
All right, so you're shocked because you couldn't understand how you could be used in this way. I just want to ask you, though, because there's how your work was used incorrectly, and then there's the premise of what they've done. The premise of what they have done basically is, as you described it, do unto others as they do unto you, right? That they, the way they define reciprocal, the premise that they have approached this with. Do you support that, just on its face, forgetting the math that they use? Do you support their logic?
Well, they build it as a reciprocal tariff. So, what I was expecting is that they would look at what other countries charge as tariffs to the United States, and if they're 2, 3, 4 percentage points higher, we might try to bridge that gap with a reciprocal tariff of our own. Maybe they would look also at non-tariff barriers, et cetera, but they did nothing of the sort. The main issue with these tariffs is that they define them such that they would eliminate bilateral trade deficits between the United States and every trade partner that we have in the world, one by one, where we run deficits. And once you make that the goal, barriers, et cetera, if they're 2, 3, 4 percentage points higher, we might try to bridge that gap with a reciprocal tariff of our own. Maybe they would look also at non-tariff barriers, et cetera. But they did nothing of the sort. The main issue with these tariffs is that they defined them such that they would eliminate bilateral trade deficits between the United States and every trade partner that we have in the world, one by one, where we run deficits. And once you make that the goal of the policy, it's over. You're done. Whatever formula you come up with and whatever numbers you plug into that formula, you're not going to get a good trade policy. You're instead going to come up with something that can do real harm to Americans and I think to the whole world.
Right, and that's the basic
4D chess. Trump doesn't even do math correctly.
Just to say to people that there might be a country, I know, you and I were talking earlier about examples, say Sri Lanka, where Americans buy a lot of clothes, but Sri Lanka does not buy a lot of gas turbines, for example, right? That's not a trade imbalance that would need to be corrected, right? But they're approaching it as if it is.
Right. I certainly expected, frankly, that, China would be on the list, maybe even Europe. But I was surprised to see, like you said, Sri Lanka, Jordan is on the list, Zambia is on the list. And the reason is just because, we happen to buy a lot of textiles and jewelry and coffee from those countries, and they don't buy that much, high-tech equipment or, gas turbines, like you said. And so, I think it's a mistaken philosophy to even try to calculate reciprocal tariffs the way that the way that they did. And then
I called that on the day I saw those. I was like, those look so weird. There has to be some weird number added into them. I didn't understand deficits at the time, but now I do.
From then on, frankly, the more I looked into it, there was what I would characterize as a cascade of mistakes, making these tariffs even broader and even bigger.
So let's talk about that cascade, because it comes down to the equation. They put this equation out that looks like it could have come from Einstein. This complicated equation, we'll throw it up. This is the sort of stuff, I don't know, you would see in econometrics or something like that, but it's a very fancy.
No, that looks BS. I'm sorry, that looks BS.
Fancy looking equation. It essentially boils down to you're going to take the difference between the exports and imports of a country, right? And you're going to calculate your tariffs based off of that. That's the essential thing. And then just your bottom line on this formula, is it good or no?
Yeah, so the formula is definitely not good. You know, that was the point I was making, is even the derivation of the formula, no matter what they do with it, I think it is not good trade policy. But they went further. You know, you do still have to plug some numbers into it.
So let's do that. Okay, because I said, hold on, while you're talking here, I said I had my sheet, so I put it on a whiteboard. As you and I discussed, I
Heck yeah, Aaron. You bring that whiteboard out.
might try to do, just to try to make sense of it, okay? So this is where we are, all right? We took Japan, because Trump's been talking a lot about Japan, Brent. You went through Japan. So he got a 46% tariff. That day when he stood up there, 46% came up. So I've got the numbers here, the difference between the exports and imports. I filled in all the numbers. There's one number here, though, I'm going to put in red. That is 0.25. That's your number. That's the number. Well, that's the number they say is your number, right? And when you take that number, that's the magic number, I put it in red, and you plug it into their equation, you get 46%.
I've been up all night.
This is what I've been waiting for. I've been waiting for somebody to explain like this.
Close, but not
into their equation, you get 46%.
Well, close, but not quite. The number that we would put, that I would put, based on my research in for that value is 0.95.
Okay.
And that differs from the one that they used, like you said, which was 0.25. You know, the difference is almost a factor of 4.
Yep.
So
that's a big difference.
So you put 0.95,
mathematically,
then what
it's-
happens to the 46?
Right. So, you know, if you change a number in the denominator, the bottom part of the fraction, by a factor of 4, you're going to reduce the equation, the left-hand side, the tariff, by a factor
That's a big difference. But what is that 0.25, 0.95? Are they going to explain it?
of 4. So specifically, you know, when Trump held up that sign and it had a 46 for Japan, you know, if you instead used 0.95, which is what I think my research motivates, you know, you'd get a number like 12%, much, much lower than 46%. And it doesn't even have to be that extreme. If you picked a number like 3, you'd still go down to 15%, you know, much, much lower. And the other thing I did want to just mention, because, you know, you said...
But what is that number? What is that number?
They got that 25 from you. To be clear, I don't know where they got that 0.25.
Right.
And
Well,
what
they
I
say they
find
got it from you. I
astounding-
should have been more accurate there, yeah.
Well, not quite. I mean, it's, you know, this is an unbelievably consequential policy. I mean, I listened to the guests in your interview just now. You know, markets are moving tremendously. I mean, this is a really, really consequential policy for the world, for the country, for everyone. And yet the whole methodology explaining how they did this is, you know, a couple pages long, and I can't answer that question. I have colleagues saying, what is that 0.25 number? And, you know, for instance, I don't even know.
Well, yeah, but I mean, you know, you talk about literally you could have things like war and peace depending on it. I mean, you go from 46 to 12 and do Trump's
That's wild. This is the wildest video I've seen today.
math and take half. You'd be looking at 6% instead of 24. I mean, it is just absolutely stunning to think about that. And I think so important that you say all of that. A lot of it could come down to this one number, your number, that's just who knows where the heck it came from. I mean, it's stunning. Brent, I really appreciate your time and thank you very much.
What is that number, though? What is that number supposed to be? It's this middle number. I have no idea what this little squiggly line is. What's this guy's name? Brent Neiman. The room number from The Shining. That's funny. Trump used my research to calculate tariffs but got it wrong. The economist has claimed that White House used his work to calculate reciprocal levies but made a clerical error. An economist has claimed, blah, 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 which caused tariffs officials to grossly overestimate how much each country owed. Brett Nyman, a professor of blah, 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 said that a 25% rate was erroneously added to the formula and his colleagues created, meaning that the tariff rates Trump imposed were 4 times as large as they should have been. But what is the number? The Office of the U.S. Trade Representative released its methodology and cited an academic paper produced by 4 economists, including me, seemingly in support of its numbers, but it got it very, very wrong. Oh, the reference to Nyman's paper is no longer on the White House website. That's interesting. I think they grabbed the wrong number from our research. Had the trade office instead used a value closer to the 95% number from our work, as I believe it should have done, the computed tariffs would have been as little as 1/4. Okay. We get that. What is the number? What is this 25% number supposed to represent? I can't figure it out. White House tariff formula. All right. Simple. Trump just made up the numbers, but that guy is saying that this number should be 95 and they put 25. I'm saying, what is this number supposed to represent? Reciprocal tariffs are calculated as a tariff rate necessary to balance bilateral trade deficits between the U.S. and each of our trading partners. We already know that trade deficits are not a good thing to go off of, but whatever. This calculation assumes that persistent trade deficits are due to a combination of tariff and non-tariff factors. We know that's not true. Tariffs work through direct reductions of imports, tariff, blah, blah, blah. Reciprocal tariff rates range from 0 to 99 with unweighted imported, blah, 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 blah. To conceptualize reciprocal tariffs, the tariff rates that would drive bilateral trade deficits to zero were computed. Consider an environment in which the U.S. levies a tariff rate TI on country I, and TI reflects the change in tariff rate. Let this thing is less than 0 represents the elasticity of imports with respect to import prices. Let this thing represent, here we go, represent the pass-through from tariffs to import prices. So that represents the pass-through from, I don't know what that really means exactly, but that's, I guess, what it represents. The pass-through from tariffs to import prices. Does anybody understand that? The smuggle rate. Let me see if I ask. What is the pass-through from tariffs to import prices? Let's see if anything comes up. The pass-through from tariffs to import prices refers to the extent to which the cost of a tariff imposed on imported good is reflected in the final price consumers pay. Interesting. So that would make sense that they would lower that purposely, because they're saying, oh, you're only going to pay 25%, right? Or I don't know. All right, at least I kind of understand what it means now, at least. So maybe they were trying to say that only 25% would be passed on to, or no, they're calculating the existing. So they're saying that right now we only pay 25% on these tariffs, and he's saying that we actually pay like 95% of the costs. Is that correct? It's added to the sticker price, right? I get that. I get what it is now. I don't get why they would either lower it or raise it. I mean, just maybe to make their percentages go up. Do I want to read this or not? I get what it is. It's how much of the tariff is added to the sticker price. 0.25 is higher than 0.95, right? It's a higher number. Or is that a percentage? I don't know. Now I'm confusing myself. First, the formula of the alleged tariff rate from each trading partner is a fully blah, blah, blah. Let me see if I can find the word pass-through in this. Okay, the full expression is slightly more complex than the reduction from discussed, than the reduced form discussed thus far. There are actually two parameters, this thing, representing the pass-through of tariffs to domestic prices and the elasticity of demand for imports, respectively. But with values of 1/4 and 4, respectively, these parameters happen to cancel out perfectly. These parameters are likely difficult to estimate and will not dwell on them too much, but one point deserves mention. The low value of pass-through is justified with a sentence declaring that, quote, the recent experience with U.S. tariffs on China has demonstrated that tariffs pass-through to retail prices was low. This is not a tax foundation's overall read of the literature on pass-through tariffs to retail prices, and it's not how we would characterize the results, which are considerably more nuanced. More importantly, this is an equivocation. The foreign tariff rates are invented numbers derived from no explicit policies based on the dubious theoretical assumption that unspecified but retaliation-worthy factors conspired to prevent trade from balancing. God, that was confusing as F. All right, but this is what I know. The Trump administration did not use the correct number for this pass-through rate. And a pass-through rate is the sticker price added based on the tariffs. Now, why was there different, obviously, to raise this for some reason. That's what I know. Does that make sense? Thumbs up if that much makes sense. I don't know what 0.25 versus 0.95 means exactly. If one means we pay more or pay less. But that's what I get so far. Thumbs up if you understand that. Thumbs down if you don't. I ended the poll. Who won? Oh, haven't watched one. Joffrey won. Thumbs up from Michael Nightwolf. Jan says, Trump always has to have the upper hand. He always has to be in control and crush other people. And he has the whole U.S. government now and his personal business. So again, good to be king. Not good.
You may... wrote in the equation that's thrown free market trade into a tailspin, sending major stock indexes around the globe spiraling. This carefully calculated combination of symbols is the partial work of 4 renowned economists, including University of Chicago Booth School of Business professor Brent Nyman. And when the Trump administration cited Nyman's research to calculate tariffs, Nyman wrote in a New York Times op-ed today, they got it all wrong.
When President Trump paraded an oversized chart into the Rose Garden as part of his pitch for global tariffs, some economists' eyes popped at the seemingly inflated numbers. University of Chicago Booth School of Business economist Brent Nyman noticed immediately.
Yeah, my immediate thought is gosh, how could those numbers be so high?
Those numbers, Trump said, showed tariffs levied against U.S. products by other countries.
European Union, very friendly. They rip us off.
But those numbers, economists explain, aren't tariffs against the U.S., but a calculation of trade deficit between the U.S. and other countries. And it was Nyman's work, in part, from this 2021 research piece on tariffs and evidence of U.S. trade policy that Trump's team cited in calculating those reciprocal tests of U.S.
His thing was called tariff pass-through at the border and at the store. All right, so it's very clear what that means now.
Trade policy that Trump's team cited in calculating those reciprocal tariffs. But the administration's math, he says, doesn't check out.
I think they grabbed the wrong number from our research. The one that I would use from my own research and plug into their equation is actually 4 times larger than the number they used. And as a result, the deficits they calculated are 4 times larger than what I think they should have gotten.
Northwestern economist Martin Eichenbaum knows that report and its authors well.
What's the detriment in using that equation incorrectly?
Well, you're going to get the wrong numbers for the tariff barriers. You're going to find out, you're going to conclude, for example, that various countries are imposing huge tariff barriers when in fact they're not.
Now, as markets reel in the uncertainty of tariffs and global trade, President Trump Monday showed no sign of changing course.
It's the only chance we're going to...
And Tuesday he did. No, what is it? Wednesday he did. All right, that is the pass-through calculation rate, which is essentially how much of the tariff is added to the sticker price. Wait, here's this guy. Yes.
In short, this equation, derived and published by the Trump administration, combined with their own numbers, nothing to do with me or anyone else, predicts that
Shout out to Stand Up Maths.
There will be over 10% inflation on all goods imported into the US as paid by US consumers. Their numbers, their equation. Let me explain.
I'd like to see the chart if you have it.
To celebrate Liberation Day, where he waved around some physical spreadsheets, which obviously caught my eye. And watching the footage, I'm like, it looks like the second column is just half the first column, but with a floor of 10%. So of course I went and found them online, put them into an actual spreadsheet, put in a formula, and yes, the second column is just half the first column, but with
Okay, that's pretty clear, bro. Come on.
a minimum of 10%. I was like, that's interesting. I didn't put any further thought into where those equations come from. I satisfied my curiosity for the time, because the next day, the Trump administration, they know how to get me. They released an equation. They're like, this is the equation of where those percentages came from. I was like, okay, fine, I'll do it. So I had a closer look at the equation, and I'm now qualified to talk you through it. This equation does indeed calculate all the values in that first column of the spreadsheet Trump was waving around, which means it represents the tariffs charged to the USA, and I quote, including currency manipulation and trade barriers. Except it doesn't. That's not what that is. This is not calculating the tariffs other countries are charging the US. This is calculating the tariffs the US would have to charge other countries in order to get trade balance.
Right.
For example, last year, Australia bought from the US $34.6 billion worth of stuff. And that's US dollars, not the local dollary dues. At the same time, the US only bought $16.7 billion worth of things from Australia. So from the US's point of view, Australia gave them more money than the US gave Australia, to the tune of a $17.6 billion trade surplus. And surplus sounds positive, just means Australia bought more things from the US than it sold. Now New Zealand is the other way around. Very similar country, I would say, not everyone would. And Australia bought from the US $4.5 billion worth of things last year. The US, however, bought $5.5 billion worth of things from New Zealand. So that means the US is running a £1.1 billion deficit, a trade deficit, which sounds bad, just means the US bought a lot, I don't know.
Pound? You mean dollar?
New Zealand wine. But let's just say hypothetically it was bad, and the US wanted to balance out its trade with New Zealand. It would need to reduce the amount it imports from New Zealand by 19.6% to get back down to parity. And that is what this equation tells you. On the left-hand side, that triangle is the delta that represents the amount of change. The tau, the T-looking thing, represents tariffs, and the I just means for one specific country. Country I. So for example, we'll stick with New Zealand for now. So this means the formula is calculating the change in tariffs the US would have to charge country I, New Zealand. And that is to achieve trade balance. On the right-hand side, we work that out. X is the amount the US is exporting to that country. M is the amount it's importing from that country. So the difference is the trade imbalance, although wrong way around. We'll get to that in a moment. Underneath is where it gets fun. M is still the imports, but epsilon, the E thing, that represents the elasticity of demand for the imports going into the US. And the phi symbol, that represents the price pass-through of tariffs. That's a ratio of how much of the costs are passed on. Okay, so we'll break it down with an example. Let's say the US is importing a bottle of wine from New Zealand that would normally sell for around $100.
This is what I wanted.
Behind
folks.
the delivery trucks that keep your...
This is what I wanted. I'm starting to understand. It's starting to form in my brain and solidify in a good way. All right, come on. Paris to the Swiss Alps. That sounds amazing. Sign me up.
$100 from New Zealand that would normally sell for, I don't know, $100. And the reason it's $100 is tariffs are currently 0%, that's our baseline, and demand is 100%, but then tariffs go up by down to tau, let's just say 20% for argument's sake. How much is that going to change the price? Well, that depends how much of this increase passes through to the customer. That was our symbol phi from before, some ratio. Let's say hypothetically it's a quarter, so prices go up by 5%. What's going to happen over here with demand? What's that going to be? Well, that depends how elastic demand is. That was our epsilon from before. And we could say hypothetically demand is 4 times whatever the percentage price change is. This does, of course, assume...
Saspa says, how can they know ahead of time how elastic demand curve is? I think that's what he's saying. They don't. They're just estimating.
The elasticity of demand is linear. I looked up a much more complicated model from a research paper.
Holy shit.
There's your demand curve, and you got 2 different supply curves because there's what the manufacturer are actually getting, and then there's what the consumer's seeing because of the extra tariff. Tau, we move to this point over here, and you can say it's linear, but what they've done is a bit of a oversimplification, and that's going to be a theme. But we should now just remind ourselves what we're trying to do. If you take all of your imports and subtract your exports, that's your trade deficit. And if you divide that by the imports, that's the percentage imports have to go down. This is the reduction in demand required. Oh, and that's what we've just worked out here. So there's our equation. And if you move the phi and epsilon under here, rearrange it like that, this is exactly what the Trump administration were using. But of course, it's much more complicated than that. The diagram I showed you before is actually from a paper that looked at what happened after Trump's 2018 tariffs. Joint publication between the Federal Reserve Bank of New York and universities Princeton and Columbia. And this is the sort of detail you want to go into when you're bringing in tariffs. Look at this analysis. It's factoring in other things like how the price is going to change relative to demand. It's looking at possible reciprocal tariffs that come in. Like this is what you should be doing when you're planning tariffs to impact your economy. This level of detail. And we know they didn't put in that detail because on the Office of the United States Trade Representative page, they give all their working out and logic behind it. And there is our equation. And there is none of the detail we would like to see for something this complicated. They do admit that actually it would be very complex. I mean, if not impossible to do exactly, and that's true. But they just don't bother. They just decide to proxy it by this equation.
That's funny. They're basically saying, like, can't really figure this out. We're just winging it.
Now, I've seen the discussion online that maybe this was generated by ChatGPT or something like that. I can't comment on that or even the economics behind it, but I can talk about the maths of the equation. For a start, the M and X are the wrong way around. You should be subtracting exports from imports. So this...
That's funny.
I mean, it's just technically a negative
coefficient they've put in there, but also at the same time, they've said epsilon is less than 0, which mathematically is very funny because epsilon normally means something else. But in this context, maybe that means demand goes down when prices go up, and so that would kind of cancel that. It's just all very odd. And there's one more thing that really bugs me. Hey, Editor Matt, can you like crop me down and move me right over so the bottom of the equation is like right there? Okay, excellent. There's these asterisks. What are they doing there? So here's the thing about an asterisk in mathematical notation. It's not how you would write multiplication. I mean, we understand it to mean multiplication, but that's because sometimes if you're using a keyboard or a number pad or something that hasn't got a multiplication sign, you use the asterisk as like a replacement.
Who made this video? This is by Stand Up Maths. Go subscribe to him now.
To mean multiply. So actually in Excel, you'll use an asterisk to represent multiplication, but it's only really used in terms of like data entry. You use it when you're telling something to multiply.
Right. When you multiply things, you just put them next to each other and you just know that's multiplication.
You never use
right?
it as a symbol to represent multiplication. For that we have the multiplication sign. Or some mathematicians obviously get quite lazy, so you'll see in more advanced maths, you won't use multiplication sign anymore, you just put two characters next to each other.
I said that. I suck at math, but I knew that. I'm smarter than the Trump administration.
Or you'll use a dot. Very rare. It's very odd to use asterisks to represent multiplication when you're typesetting maths, which is what they're doing here. They're trying to show you what the formula is. They should just have them next to each other. I don't know why they've done it. It's like writing a note for someone and at the end of it drawing in the cursor. Like it's not what you do in the written version of this communication, even though it's what you might do if you're typing it in somewhere. You know, like a carriage return, cursor on the next line. That's not how it works. So I don't know, it's just weird. The whole thing reeks of mathsiness, which is where you can dress something up in the trappings of mathematics to make it look more legit, make it look more earned or worked out or, important, when what you may have done is just come up with an idea and then make it look more mathsy as a way to convince people you've put maybe more thought into it than you actually have. And it gets worse. I didn't just pick the values of phi as a quarter and epsilon as 4 at random. Those are the values the Trump administration used. And if you put them together, guess what happens to 4 1/4? Boom! They're gone! That phi and epsilon cancel out. It's like they're not even in the equation.
That's weird.
Turns out this column is just the trade deficit as a percentage of imports. That's it. It's that simple, except trade deficit, like they're not even...
Hold on one second.
Even in the equation. Turns out this column is just the trade deficit as a percentage of imports. That's it. It's that simple, except it's not applied consistently. And I know that because I looked up the data. Of course, I want to check everything for myself, so I went onto the government website to get the exact import and export figures for every single country that was in those first 2 charts I put in the spreadsheet. And thankfully, each page for those countries, there's a section at the bottom which follows a very similar format. So I pasted all of those into a text document. I could have done some kind of complicated scraping things, but for 50 entries, it was quicker to just do it manually. Because the sentences had all been generated algorithmically from their data, they're all very, very similar. So I could use find and replace to take out all the common bits and turn them into tabs, which meant that I could paste them into Excel, a little bit of tidying up, and there were 4 countries I couldn't find the data for, like Serbia and Tunisia and a couple others. I then had all the data, official government data from the same department as the equation for 46 of those countries. It means I can now go through here. This has got all the countries in the order they appear on those printed out charts. It's got the 2 numbers that were printed on the chart. I then over here have the import amounts from 2024 in US dollars and the export amounts in US dollars. I can then work out the deficit fraction, which is the percentage we need to get it down by. And over here, I've then predicted what it should be based on their formula. And next to it is what's actually on the page. And if you have a look, all of these are very similar. Wait a minute. What's going on here? Negative 17 and 10. I'm going to reorder these and sort them by that deficit fraction from smallest to largest. And down the bottom here, these are the countries where the US is running a trade deficit. And as you can see down here, it matches perfectly. It's often off by 1%, but not always in the same direction. So there's some rounding going on somewhere. That's fine. But down here, these are the runs where the US is running a trade surplus, not a deficit. And so this is where the US are getting more money in than they're sending out. And all of these, they should have in theory a negative tariff according to their equation, because if the goal is just to have a balanced budget, then they should make the imports artificially cheap to move it back to being balanced. But it's not even just that. There's always this default. Okay, this is so weird. So for some reason, they half them all. So over here, they're all half, but it doesn't go below 10%. So what's interesting is 17 halves to 10, 20 halves to 10, and then 30 halves to 15. And from then on, you get the halving effect. And that half amount is apparently here the USA discounted reciprocal tariff. So, I mean, I'm not going to say they made up the epsilon equals 4, phi equals a quarter, but they're numbers that have come out of nowhere. And then suddenly they just chuck in a factor of 2 or a half, depending on how you look at it. Like, why? Like, why?
Hi, I'm Charlie Reimer, executive.
Let's talk trade deficits very briefly. So the word deficit sounds bad, and the word surplus sounds good. And I guess that would be true if you're looking at like money you were earning as a person or a business. But in terms of trade, they're just mathematical descriptions of the relative amounts of trade. There's no good or bad situation. A deficit can be good or bad. A surplus can be good or bad. It depends on all the details of what is being imported and exported and the wider economy. So for the New Zealand case, the US imports, well, primarily meat. Meat is the top import from New Zealand going into the US. After that, they've got other animal products, eggs. Important to get some more eggs in the US, and beverages, like wine. So that's what is going from New Zealand to the US. What's going from the US to New Zealand? Well, aircraft, spacecraft, machinery, nuclear reactors. It's a totally different type of trade, like completely different items. And now you stop and think, well, hang on, why is it important to import the same amount of wine as we export aircraft? Like, why should those two things be the same? You've got to look at everything separately. You might think, well, hang on, the wine imports make a difference to our local wine production. And maybe there are reasons to have tariffs to fine-tune your local wine production. Or maybe in terms of exporting aircraft, if you want to encourage more US manufacturing, then that's good. You want to be selling more. Just saying, it's not as simple as surplus good, deficit bad. So in conclusion,
that makes sense.
These tariffs are being sold as reciprocal tariffs, but they're not reciprocal tariffs. So the tariffs should need to balance trade. And that in itself is being sold separately. If you don't listen to what Trump said, but you read what was put on the website, that's been sold as good. US are being ripped off with all these deficits. We need to get it back to be neutral or surplus. And that's not true either. So there's some reason that they want to put tariffs on every country, and they've come up with a sufficiently mathsy way to justify it. And finally, speaking of taxing the American people, we'll use their exact wording from their website. They talk about what the unweighted averages are across all the countries, and an unweighted average in this case is meaningless because you can't average percentages because they're percentages of different amounts of things, has to be weighted. But they do tell us, weighted by imports, as it should be, the average across the entire globe is 41%. So that's the average tariff. And we know from their logic that whatever tariff you introduce, a quarter of that will be passed on to the consumer. Their numbers, their ratios, their everything, by saying the average increase in tariffs will be 41 percentage points, and a quarter of that, the price pass-through, will go to the consumers. It means the Trump administration is saying that across all products imported into the US, from every other country across the globe, the cost to consumers for everything they buy will go up by 10.25%. On average, that's everything. Some will be more, some will be less. Consumer spending is going to go up by over 10% on all imported products into the US. So there you are.
Do you believe Americans can afford higher prices because of tariffs?
They're not going to have higher prices. What's going to happen, who's going to have higher prices is China and all of the countries that have been ripping us off for years.
Both those things are wrong. None of that's how that works. But it's just funny that on one hand they say tariffs won't put prices up and they're going to combat inflation. On the flip side, they are saying everything's going to go up by 10.25%, including from New Zealand.
Did he ever explain why the surplus countries were the math was off?
Getting more money in than they're sending out. And all of these, they should have in theory a negative tariff according to their equation, because if the goal is just to have a balanced budget, then they should make the imports artificially cheap to move it back to being balanced. But it's not even just that. There's always this default. Okay, this is so weird. So for some reason, they half them all. So over here, they're all half, but it doesn't go below 10%. So what's interesting is 17 halves to 10, 20 halves to 10, and then 30 halves to 15. And from then on, you get the halving effect. And that half amount is apparently here the USA discounted reciprocal tariff. So, I mean, I'm not going to say they made up the epsilon equals 4, phi equals a quarter, but they're numbers that have come out of nowhere. And then suddenly they just chuck in a factor of 2 or a half, depending on how you look at it. Like, why? Like, why? Let's talk trade deficits very briefly.
All right. He didn't really explain that.
Neutrogena hydro.
But that was a very good video. That helped understand a lot. Trump is playing 4D chess with bad math.
Go into effect at midnight tonight. The American Enterprise Institute, a conservative think tank, now points out their plans contain math errors, serious math errors. The formula.
Oh, they said that.
Even received criticism from supporters of the president. Republican mega donor and Home Depot founder Ken Langone calls the tariffs, quote, bullshit, saying,
oh, BS.
I mean, it's everything, sir.
Sinks and toilets,
dishwashers, toilets, sinks. But the shower heads are a huge
There's no
deal.
water. You don't get water. It's ridiculous.
So with this executive order, we're effectively going to be reversing that set of regulations to ensure that Americans have choice in the consumer market. If they want a low-flow shower head, they can buy one. If they want a real deal shower head, they
Oh, God, shower heads. Congrats, Phoenix and Los Angeles. You're going to run out of water because Trump's going to change all your shower heads to guzzle all your water down.
Restrictors on. They used to have a restrictor where you could take it out, but now they weld it in. And you take a shower or wash your hands, whatever you do, including dishwashers where no water comes out. But
oh my God, Trump's on a water tirade right now. Water, we can't even wash our hands anymore. We can't take showers. The water pressure is too low.
Drip, drip. It's ridiculous.
Drip, drip.
And what you do is you end up washing your hands 5 times longer. It's the same water. and we're going to open it up so that people can live, and we're going to hopefully have Congress approve it. So it's
Bye-bye Colorado River.
all of these things, including straws, a little thing like straws. We did straws a month ago, where the paper straws were melting, they were dissolving,
Oh,
they
no.
weren't working well, and we went back to the plastic straws.
Thank God.
We're going to get Congress to memorialize just about everything we've done here, because most of it's common sense. But the water is
Yeah, it's all common sense. Let's make trillions and trillions of plastic waste through plastic straws. Common sense.
a wash of the hands. And so we're changing. It's a big deal. I did it in the first administration.
You can't wash your hands anymore. Drip, drip, drip.
He told him to do it. In his first week, he put the restrictions on all the bathroom utilities. Even in areas that have so much water, they don't know what to do with it. You see those areas all the time with the flooding. So we're doing that, and we're going to get all of the things that you've seen. I think we set a record. We're up to almost 200 and 500 amendments. Nobody's ever done that much. We're going to get them approved by Congress, so they're memorialized. And we look forward to doing that. Very important. And Congress is going to start working on it as soon as we get the big, beautiful deal done. The big, beautiful deal is important. The biggest tax cuts in the history of our country, that's important.
Uh-oh. That's going to only the rich people.
Okay.
I can't even wash the soap off of me while I'm taking a shower. Lonnie has to come in and wipe all the soap off of me after I'm done with the shower.
This is another executive order relating to deregulation, sir. There are a lot of regulations on the books that either promote monopoly directly or prevent new market entrants from entering into a given market. The net effect of that is very negative for consumers. So what this executive order is going to do is direct your departments and agencies to work with the FTC, with the Attorney General, with the Department of Justice, to ensure that the regulations we have on the books don't function as anti-competitive barriers to new market entrants. The net effect of all of that is going to hopefully be market forces that redound to the benefit of consumers and ordinary Americans.
I mean, that sounds like a good thing.
I said yesterday he was a great, great student at Harvard before it went bad. It's gone really bad. Now they're teaching their students mathematics, basic mathematics. Can you believe it? So what does that mean? They're allowing people in?
Oh, let's get back to mathematics, Trump. We just talked about that on the Sam Lichtman stream.
It was pretty liberal when I was there, but it's gone way off the deep end in recent years.
I don't know if you read that. They're teaching them basic mathematics, people that got accepted to Harvard. How come they got accepted if they don't have mathematics? And we're holding back $8 billion. Can we believe? We give Harvard $8 billion. And we're holding back Columbia. We're holding back a lot of the schools because they were woke. And they've hurt a lot of people.
He literally admits, I'm not giving them money because I disagree with them. That's the First Amendment president right there for you folks.
Thank you, sir.
Okay.
There are a large number of regulations on the books. These are regulations that are currently in effect that we believe blatantly violate the law, blatantly violate Supreme Court precedent that otherwise are just blatantly illegal. So what this presidential memorandum does basically just directs the heads of your departments and agencies to follow the law and to cease enforcing regulations that are blatantly illegal or unconstitutional.
I don't know what that means.
Big deal.
Smooth.
Yes, sir.
Congress. Very important.
Cricket says I just signed on. The first thing I heard was Trump say, drip, drip. Drip, drip, baby.
EOs for the day. This is zero-based regulatory budgeting. The idea here is that over time, regulations accumulate on the books and in the Federal Register, and people aren't taking a close, detailed look at what's on the books and clearing them out as times change or as regulations become dated or ineffective. What this executive order is going to require is each of your departments and agencies.
You ready? Okay.
Regulations that
All right, I gotta
actually
run, folks.
have on the books.
Who is
and
this guy, by the way?
those that
I don't even know who this guy is. I have to run, folks. It was a pleasure being with you all today. crazy few days. I appreciate all of you just hanging out, you know? And I'm close to 9,000 subscribers. So if you want to, you know, tell your friends, tell your family, tell Reddit, you know, whoever you want to do, just tell them, hey, stop by the Sam Lickman's channel. You check it out. That would be great. Thank you all.